If they've already proved that they're good enough, why aren't they getting a chance? Surely developing homegrown talent is one of the basic pillars English football is built upon, and those pillars, little by little, are beginning to crumble.
We have the best, or amongst the best, raw talent in the world.
England, one of the most naturally talented footballing countries in the world that's nurtured into failure and underachievement on a consistent basis. Why is it that a region of the world with such naturally gifted youngsters fall by the wayside in the modern game?
We've had all the talk, we've had all the chat, we've had all the promises, we've had all the excuses, and it's never, ever changed. But my word, how far short did England fall?
I start off my journey with a footballing connoisseur, David Hockaday, a man who has played, coached and managed at nearly every level of the footballing pyramid to get his opinion on the state of English football. What, in your opinion, is it that the youngsters of today's game need to demonstrate in order to break the glass ceiling and achieve their full potential?
Hunger and belief. The boys that come to me are late developers. They're in the pro game for a reason, or they're not in the pro game for a reason, whichever way you want to look at it. They will be late developers physically, technically, tactically, emotionally, whatever terms you want to use. What they have to show is a hunger, an appetite, a desire, and they need to believe in themselves, because the best players are the best actors. So we'll work on repetition, we'll work on them being the world class at the basics, so repetition on the basics. Technically, tactically, we can work, we can build them up physically, emotionally. They can develop a slightly less pressure, in a slightly less pressurised environment. And every time we play the pros, we need to be hungry than them, we need it more than them, and you need to believe.
Do you think that there's a common theme or trait which is leading to the failure of the country's finest talent?
I think there's a belief. I believe that we haven't mastered the basics. I don't think we've been world class at the basics. So we invented the game and we were the best or one of the best, and a lot of the lesser nations football wise have overtaken us. We finally realised that, and now we are playing catch up, and we will always be highly competitive against any of the top clubs. Brazil won't relish playing England, Germany won't relish playing England. The big thing for us now is we do really well qualifying for European and world competitions. We now need to nail the psychology of being a successful tournament team.
I know you've worked quite closely with A.D. Boothroyd in the past. He obviously had success at the youth level. What do you think is the mentality between the youth teams and the senior teams? Do you think it's more to do with media pressure, or?
There's certainly less pressure. We have the best, or amongst the best, raw talent in the world. So we have as good raw talent as the Germans, as the Brazilians, whatever. The FA have now got to a situation where the coach educators, and they're the coaches who go around the country teaching people how to coach and get their badges, they were then put in charge of the national teams. Well, good coach educators are not necessarily the best team managers. So now they've identified better team managers, and they will keep on developing that process. So we've got better coaches and team managers now. We've got the raw materials. The trick has been getting them from youth level, where at the moment I think we're probably world champions at 2 ages and European champions at another, and so we're fiercely competitive there. The next challenge, or one of the next challenges, will be to get that to translate into senior football.
The riches of the Premier League, do you think that's stifling young talent, and do you think legislation could help?
Yes and yes. When I played, there weren't 3 centuries ago, there weren't many people from abroad playing. Now there are. So what's happened is you've got the Premier League and you've got a lot of foreign players in there. You've got the Championship and quite a few foreign players in there. We can argue about whether they earn their corn. You've got the first, the second. You've got a lot of players now in the National League, which is pretty much full time. So whereas we had 4 before, because of the influx of foreign players, it's all sort of gone down to another level. Now we've got a lot of good young English players not able to play in the Premier League for their team, so they're getting loaned out into the Championship or maybe the First Division, but the top players probably into the Championship. So legislation, so that is obviously hindering the chances of our best young players who are very, very good. Legislation would help, so if we could start capping the number of players that can be played on any given Saturday in the Premier League, or you're given a squad of 25 and only so many can be foreign and the rest have to be homegrown imports, that would certainly improve the chances of the young English players coming through, playing in the Premier League and then flourishing in the England national team.
We're currently undergoing a transitioning period for the next generation of English talent, which could be make or break. What is it that is stifling young talent in this country, and how can foreign lands help the future of English football?
I think there are a number of factors which contribute to the failure of English football, but ultimately what separates us from the Brazilians, the Argentinians, the Spanish, the French and the Italians is one thing: game time. In this country, English players are not given a chance at the top level. You see in Italy, France, Spain, Germany, Brazil, Argentina, all of their leagues are heavily populated with homegrown players, but unfortunately this just simply isn't the case in England. The Premier League is the richest, most prestigious league in the world, and that, in my opinion, is one of the biggest flaws of English football. Due to the riches available to the top clubs, they can just go out into Europe and buy whatever talent they want because simply they can afford it. For me, this needs to change. We're seeing the likes of Jadon Sancho, Ademola Lookman moving abroad to the Bundesliga. Yes, Lookman's deal was only a loan deal, but they're seeing that they've got talent and they're proving it, they're given a chance and they're stepping up to the plate. Jadon Sancho is arguably one of England's hottest talents right now, and quite simply, at Man City, he wasn't given any chances at all. He didn't make one senior appearance, yet he's gone to Borussia Dortmund. He's had big shoes to fill in replacing Ousmane Dembele, but he stepped up to the plate. Now he's starting to come through into one of the biggest sides in Germany and one of the biggest sides in European football. He's given a chance because quite simply in that country, they love giving youngsters a chance, and this is what separates us from the Germans. We went out in the last World Cup at the group stage, they went and won the whole thing. It's because simply all of their German players are playing football, they're getting minutes on the board and English players are not. We're starting to see some change now. We're seeing the likes of Keenan Bennett's been from Tottenham Hotspur to Borussia Mönchengladbach, and again another Tottenham Hotspur player, Rio Griffiths, set to move to Red Bull Leipzig. These are the type of moves that have to happen in order for English football to progress, else we're not going to be able to get out of this cycle of constant disappointment, failure and underachievement.
Have you ever had to tell a youth player that they're going to be released from the academy, and what is that like?
That, of everything you do as a coach, is the worst period, when you tell an under-16 player who might have been at the club from 8 right through to 16 that he's not going to be given a scholarship, or the best ones are given pro, but most of them are given scholarships. That's the hardest conversation you can have, because when you see the devastation on these young men's faces, it is like somebody's chopped them off at the knee. Now the good coaches, the experienced coaches, will prepare that, so when it comes to giving them the decision, they really know. But some of them, live in this self-delusional world where they still think they're going to get it, and that's the toughest job that any coach, that's the toughest interview or chat you can have with a player when they're under 16 and you say, listen, we're not going to be taking you on to the next level, and that can, a lot of players don't recover from that, unfortunately.
Do you think there should be more support networks for disregarded youth prospects?
Yeah, again, so when I was at Watford, Southampton, wherever I've been at youth level, if you're going to tell a young lad, then you should have pathways for them, you should give them other options. So there are release trials where the best of people have been released, go and play, and there's other clubs looking. So if I was at Watford, a Premier League club, somebody who's not good enough for me should be good enough for somebody else, and I would be building up a network of other coaches and saying, listen, this lad played against you, he did really well, he's not going to be quite good enough for us, are you interested? So the better conversations are, listen, you're not going to be done with us, and there's a lower club that are very interested in you, and we strongly recommend you go on trials. Now if you've got more than one club, then great, because then you've got competition. They need to have made sure that they've got their academic studies in place, because then they're very attractive to American colleges and Australian colleges and Canadian colleges and stuff like that. So it's part of the club that they're with to provide pathways for them. So it's not this pathway is a no at the moment, here's another few. And the more options young men have, the better.
Statistics have shown that less than 1% of competitive footballers will make it all the way to the Premier League. This means there is a more realistic chance of being hit by lightning than making it to the top. How does this country cater for the select few of this generation and others yet to come, and tackle the problem within?